Hey guys, I just wanted to remind you about my Creating Your Happy merch. So I've talked about it a little here and there, but I'm going full-fledged with it. So I wanted to remind you guys that I have created a merch that when you wear it, it just makes you happy. My main shirt that I love the most and my main design that I came up with is Girl Happy Looks Good on You. So, of course, my podcast is all about being happy, finding our happiness, things like that, things that make us happy. So, I decided to create some cute merch that makes you happy while you wear it. So, go check it out on my Instagram at Creating Your Happy Podcast, and I will also add my Etsy shop at the bottom. Hey guys, welcome back to the Creating Your Happy Podcast. And it's Monday, so you know what that means, a new episode. If you've been following along, I started a second season and we are talking all about trauma. We're talking about how it affects your mind, body, and soul, how it affects you in the future from, childhood trauma to past bad experiences to, abusive relationships and how it is affecting you right now. So, on this episode, we're going to talk about the misunderstood concept of trauma. A lot of people feel like trauma has to be like, something super awful and drastic. For instance, childhood abuse or physical or sexual abuse or, being kidnapped or any kind of craziness like that, which of course that is traumatic. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that it's not traumatic, but trauma can also look like smaller things. It can look like a situation that, as your mind, as your brain was developing as a child, that it traumatized you and now it triggers you as an adult. Um, from a situation like you being super excited about something and your mom or your dad being, too busy to notice, and you're a kid and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like I did this amazing thing, like I don't know, won a science fair project or something like that." And your parents either didn't acknowledge you or they were like, "Oh, great, cool, that's not that big of a deal." That teaches you that you are not being seen. So, as a child, if that continues and you are not feeling that you're seen or you're heard, like they always said back in the day, which I do not agree with, children are meant to be seen and not heard. That is absolutely ridiculous in my mind, in my opinion. Children need to be heard because how are you going to know them? How are you going to know what they need or what they want, or if there's something bad going on? They have to be heard, right? So when you're a child and you're not heard, this can create a sense of trauma, and then when you're older you feel like you have to overcompensate to be seen and to be heard. So that's just an example, but a lot of people misunderstand the concept of trauma. It can be deeply catastrophic, like a catastrophic event, um, but it can also be a situation like I just explained. It can be extreme abuse, like I said, physical, you can see abuse, etc., things like that. Um, have you ever realized that you don't have memories from your childhood? Like you're forgetful, you're like forgetful of faces, or people tell you have the worst memory. I do. My sisters are always talking about, things that happened when we were younger, good or bad, whatever. And I'm just like, what? I don't remember that. And I never realized, I always thought I just had a really bad memory. Has anyone ever told you like you have the worst memory, right? Like, who forgets this and that, I forget so many things. I don't have really many memories from the time I was, I don't know, age of remember, probably like 4 or 5, to the time I was a teenager. I don't have a lot of memories. And I thought I'm just like one of those people that just forget. And as I'm reading this book that I've been talking about a little bit here and there, um, it's called How to Do the Work. As I'm reading this book, I'm learning a lot about myself. And one of the things is I learned that that's actually a trauma response. Forgetfulness and memory, like loss, like that of childhood, is a trauma response. Your brain uses that as a defense mechanism. No, I'm not saying my whole childhood was traumatic. I'm not saying that I had the worst parents in the world because I didn't. I love my parents very much and they love me as well. But there were some traumatic experiences. There were some traumatic things that happened. As I've discussed before, I grew up with my dad, who's an alcoholic. To this day, he is. And my sisters and I did endure some traumatic experiences. Um, I'm not going to go fully into detail, but there were things where my brain probably doesn't want to remember them. And I totally understand now why I don't have all my memories, why I can't remember certain things, because my brain is like, nope, that's going to hurt you, or that's going to make you sad, or, things like that. And then the crazy thing is, I used to journal, I used to write. I wanted to be a poet, I wanted to be a writer, I wanted to be a journalist at one point in time. And I wrote in my journal a lot because that is how I got my frustration, or when I wanted to be sad or when I was sad, I would write. And I would read my journals as an adult and I was just like, I don't remember this. But of course it would fill me with sadness because I wasn't a super happy kid all the time. I mean, there were some things that made me sad, and you know I would say were traumatic experiences. And I know a lot of people have gone through what I have gone through with an alcoholic parent and things like that. And it is really hard. It can be very hard to swallow when you are a child and then a teen. And when you're an adult, you realize, okay, those things were not okay. The things that were said or whatever, things that your parent did or your parent figure did was not okay. And it's okay to realize it's not okay. It's okay to realize that there were things in your childhood that were not okay, and you would never do that to your child, or you would never act that way to your child. It's okay. And for you to acknowledge that, that's just making you a better parent. That's just showing, okay, this particular situation or particular thing that, my mom or my dad or my whoever raised you, did or said at the time, was not okay. And I will not do that to my children. And that is you learning from your trauma and learning from your traumatic experience. So, in a sense, yes, trauma sucks and it's scary. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And it's a hard conversation to have. It really is. But if you flip it and you look at it again, going back to my perspective podcast, if you flip that and you look and you say, you know what I experienced when I was a child was not okay, and it hurt, and it made me sad or depressed or whatever it was, but I'm learning to not be that way and not treat my kids that way, or not treat my significant other in that way that I seen my, parental figure, mom, dad, whoever raised you, be treated. And people have to understand that it is absolutely okay to say these things. I forgave my dad for everything that's ever happened between us. I love my dad. I see him. I talk to him. I have no hate, anger, or anything towards him because that was my choice. But I can still say that that was not okay the way I was treated at times. That was not okay the way my sisters were treated at times or my mom was treated at times. It's just not. It is what it is. And I have struggled a lot thinking about what I'm going to say during this season because it's hard to admit that you have a traumatic childhood. It's hard to admit that you grew up with an addict as a parent. And some people that will listen to this might not be okay with me talking about it, but you know what? This is my podcast. This is me talking, and I'm trying to reach out. I want to help somebody that was in my shoes. I want to be there for somebody that didn't have anyone to talk to like I didn't. I don't want that for you. I want you to be able to, I mean, if you want to reach out to me because you're dealing with this, please do. Because I can tell you, I felt so alone at times, and I wish I would have had something like this. I wish I would have had something to listen to. I wish I would have had someone to talk to about it. And I didn't. I mean, I had my friends, but they didn't understand because they weren't going through what I was going through at times. But I know how you feel. And if you want to reach out to me, DM me on Instagram at Creating Your Happy Podcast, or TikTok, Girl Happy Looks Good on You, or Facebook, Teresa Tapia, whatever you want to message me on, I will talk to you. I will tell you that you are going to be okay. You are going to get through this. You are going to be stronger because of it. And everything is going to be okay. And trauma, like I said, is a hard, hard subject to bring up to your best friend, especially to your parents, to your family, to your therapist. I mean, it's hard to talk about for anybody. And for you, if you just listened right now and you just realized, wow, I do have bad memory. I do not remember my childhood. I do not remember this. And I did experience these things. That's a trauma response. And that's why you're here. You're here so we can heal together. You're here so you can hear from somebody that you do not know tell you it's a trauma response, but you are here to heal. And that's what we're doing. We're gonna heal ourselves in the best way we can, and we're gonna do it together. So, not only does trauma affect your memory and your brain, like I talked about in the previous episode, but it's all like trauma is not always obvious. And sometimes people don't even realize it. Like I said, if you just realize that you had that, that's kind of crazy, right? Like you're like, oh, okay, I did not realize that I had a trauma response. And if you're a parent, I'm going to ask you a question. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to answer, but I want you to be honest. Okay. So when your child disobeys you or does something wrong, do you immediately get upset, yell, or just, chill, or do you get angry? A lot of us had parents like this. If we messed up and we tried really, really hard not to mess up, our parent or parents, whoever it was, would lose it. No matter how small or how big we messed up, they would lose it. Now, let me ask you this. Are you a control freak? Do you have anxiety, or are you super, super empathetic to the point of putting your own feelings behind everybody else's? Like, no matter what, they come first. Well, that's a trauma response. Again, we don't always know that we have had trauma, but if you say yes to any of the things I just said, that is a trauma response. The way you always had to tiptoe around the parent or parents that made you feel, scared to get in trouble or whatever, it made you hyper aware of other emotions, other people's emotions, and body language to the point where you become so aware that in your adulthood, you always pay attention to those things. I am a super